Path of Exile, without a question, is an absolutely great game. Gritty, but aesthetically pleasing, especially considering it's currently 2000 years old. Fun and engaging combat that can fit anyone's wants and needs. It can be considered relatively complex when compared to the average hack and slasher, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. I personally call that a good thing. But I mean, like, come on, this game is so old it pretty much predates the Big Bang at this point. Why should I watch this video if you're gonna tell me exactly everything I already know? Well, that's a very good question, and here's the absolutely retarded answer that you were looking for. Now stick with me for a moment here, because I am not exactly your casual Path of Exile enjoyer, you see. I got somewhere between 2,000 and 3,000 hours played on this absolute bad boy. I started when Piety was the last boss and you needed to do Act 1 to 3 three times to get to the endgame. And the endgame didn't actually exist. You were just running Piety over and over and over again. And I know what you're thinking. Wow, with credentials like that, I wonder what kind of arcane insight this trash mongoloid can give us. Well, that's a very good question, and here's the absolutely dumbest answer you would probably ever get from anyone. Do you see this character right here? This level 92 raider named Flickerpoos. You know, the one right below Fast Pleasure and D McStabby, and right above Foot Fetish Queen and OnlyFans Best Girl. This is my highest achievement that I have ever gotten in this game. It's completely understandable that you think I have killed the Shaper, that I have killed the Corrupted Shaper, that I have killed the Ultra Shaper and the Ultra Shaper and every boss in the game. It's what you would obviously expect, but the reality is a little bit different. This is my shining crown jewel of achievement. I have never even dreamt or come close to killing a Guardian, let alone an actual boss. I have never done the maximum difficulty of the Ascended Trials. No, never even close. This character is so old. This was a Flicker Strike Raider who was using Terminant Est to get frenzy charges, and it was wild. Good part, extremely fun. Look at my stash, it's absolutely wild. As you can see, the current maximum map tier is 8. Admittedly, maps got changed a while ago, so in reality, I am no pleb that has only done a tier 8 map. I have done tier 12 or 13 with extreme difficulties. That is my crowding achievement. Maximum level ever achieved, 82. And 1/3. The 1/3 is extremely noticeable here. So, you know, not level 82, but level 82 and 1/3. Thank you very much. But I'm not exactly unique either. The truth is, there are tons of people who do the exact same thing as me. And that is, I choose a skill I want to play with, I choose a character I want to play it, and then I just play with that skill and character. And usually, that means around Act 4 or 5, it feels like I'm done. I know that this is pretty much the endgame how it's gonna feel playing whatever I chose to play. And now I have a choice. It's either roll a new character or stop playing. And there's countless of people who do the exact same thing as me. While Path of Exile has been the best hack and slash game on the market for multiple years in a row now, by the way, it does fall short in 3 separate categories that we are going to be going over in this video. And just because I can and I want to, I'm going to rub salt in the wound of every Path of Exile fanboy who's watching this, because these 3 things that I'm going to be talking about, Diablo 3 does far better than Path of Exile most likely will ever dream of achieving. So the first big problem is the fact that the game is absolutely horribly designed for new players to come into it. And I'm not talking about the socket system or the huge skill tree that you need to learn. Now imagine that you're a newcomer to PoE, and you enjoy playing dark wizards, necromancers, that type of things in games like this, you know, the necromancer archetype is extremely popular. A huge amount of people enjoy playing that thing. You click create new character, and you want to play your dark mage slash necromancer. And you look at your options, and there's absolutely nothing except a witch that tells you dark mage. So you play the witch, and it's absolutely fine. So, Fireball doesn't feel too great, but it's manageable. Honestly, not exactly that bad. Then you get the Brutus. Arguably one of the worst designed bosses in the history of gaming. You see, Brutus has a lot of HP, and Brutus has a lot of damage, and your resources are extremely limited. The vast majority of people just instantaneously curve stomp the first boss, that's their experience. So you try to melee Brutus. But you see, the problem is, the HP flasks heal your HP extremely fast. And a lot of people will just drink them every single time Brutus hits you. And if you do that, and you don't run away from Brutus and don't constantly attack him, you're gonna die. Brutus has absolutely zero skill-based mechanics, and if you are not extremely cautious around him and just kite him constantly, you're not killing him most likely, because using flasks properly is not going to be something even a relatively good gamer is going to be capable of doing on his first hard encounter in PoE. And Brutus, again, has absolutely not a single skillful mechanic around him. He just has a lot of HP and a lot of damage. It's the worst encounter possible. But that's not the worst part about this. The worst part comes after you kill Brutus. I know, shocking, right? It's the reward that you get to pick after killing him. You see, if you want to play the Dark Mage fantasy, there's only two possible options that you will pick as a witch. It's either going to be a raised zombie, and if you want to go summoner, that's going to be pretty good. But if you want to go Dark Mage, not a necromancer that uses summons, then you're picking Blight. And Blight is one of the absolute worst starter skills that you can ever use. It's slow, it's bad versus bosses, it has a small AoE, it's an absolute shit experience. The only time Blight gets good is the small 10-minute window when you level it up for the first time and have not entered the next map. Because the moment you enter the next map, Blight is shit yet again. Until you get to level it up again, and then experience 5 minutes of okay-ish gameplay. I honestly cannot fault a single person who picked a witch, picked the Blight, 5 minutes after said, nah, fuck this experience is horrible, I do not want to suffer like this, and just deleted PoE right afterwards. Because Blight is an unreasonably bad experience, and it is the only thing that fits a Dark Wizard fantasy. And the funny thing is, Ranger had the exact same problem. If you wanted to play a character that uses a bow, your only real option was a Ranger. A long time ago, Rangers did not have a shrapnel shot at all, and Ice Arrow was level 24 ability if I'm not mistaken. So your only real options to begin the game were Fire Arrow, which was useless for anything that's not a big target, Caustic Arrow, one of the worst feeling abilities in the game at the time, and then Split Shot, which was horrible back then. But thankfully they did fix it by adding Shrapnel Shot and Ice Arrow as beginner skills. But for anyone who wants to play a Dark Wizard, tough luck, your experience is gonna be pretty sad. And in contrast, Diablo 3 has all the skills available to you at the very start, and it keeps it fresh constantly by almost giving you a new thing to try out every level or two. Not to mention, all of the skills are strong and they feel good to use while you're leveling. The second big problem is, if you are a returning player, getting to the late game most of the time is just a repetitive, monotonous hustle that you don't want to exactly deal with. There are a multitude of problems in the Patch of Exile leveling process. So the first and most obvious problem in this case is the fact that the only way that you can reach the end game is by doing the story mode until you finish all of it. And that takes an average player anywhere between 6 to 10 hours. That is an absolutely extreme amount of time you need to spend in content that you have already done countless of times at this point without anything new added, with one ability that you use constantly. While there are multiple ways to alter skills how they function, you're never gonna really experience that until the endgame. Most threshold jewels absolutely do not alter any skill in a noticeable way. And the items that you can use in the late game that alter how a skill functions, you need to know about them and you need to buy them, and they're only accessible most of the time only at the very end game. Compared to Diablo 3, where every skill has multiple runes that completely change how the skill looks and feels, set items that change how you play the game, and single legendary items that change how skills function or how you play around them. When a new league comes out in PoE, I pick the skill that I want to play with and I pick a character. I acquire that skill through a reward or buy it, and then I play with it for a couple of hours. And after those couple of hours, I feel fulfilled. I have experienced everything that that skill has to offer, because at some point after playing a while with that skill, it doesn't feel like you're getting anything new. You're just doing that repetitive action over and over again while trying to get to the end game. And it never changes. So if at any moment you get bored, that's pretty much it. And I'm not alone in this. There are countless of people who feel the exact same way, because the end game is so long, and then you are stuck playing for multiple hours with the exact same thing without stopping, without any noticeable change. And the problem with the leveling experience is the fact that it literally never changes. You technically have leagues that are supposed to spruce up your experience while getting to the endgame and then spruce up the endgame experience, but the leagues don't exactly function like that for returning players. How many of us just flat out ignore the league experience until we get to late game? We try the league experience at Act 1, second map right after you leave the encampment, and we see how it feels. Maybe we use it a couple of more times, but if that mechanic is not just something that appears in the wild and forcefully interacts with you, most likely you're gonna start to ignore that mechanic after like 10 or 20 minutes of gameplay until you get to the end game where you actually start to reap the full rewards of this mechanic. Take the current league mechanic as an example. I honestly was kind of surprised because we have already dealt with this idea that people don't exactly like actually pressing buttons on their own so things happen, and this league mechanic is atrociously bad for that. It works like this: you press a button, a shiny orb appears and it starts going pew pew pew, and it's gonna make the creatures stronger. And if you're a beginner player, that's really bad, because those creatures are really stronger. Now the rewards are actually good and worth it, but the problem is, it takes a while until all the monsters are buffed. You need to find a big group of monsters, then press the button, wait until they're all buffed. And spoiler alert, you can't always tell if all the monsters are buffed because it's actually really hard to tell, and then you need to kill them. But they're really strong, and while that is happening, you're just running away from them. So that is a bad experience of itself. But since it's something you need to trigger on your own, a situation like this may happen when you think, oh, there's a huge group of monsters there, I'm gonna trigger that thing. You trigger it, and turns out there's actually nothing there. And you waste the full charge because you didn't use it up fully. So you feel like you wasted something that was supposed to be a fun experience. And that's pretty bad. And third of all, gearing. And yes, this is also going to be a two-parter. Problem 1 was a two-parter, and Problem 2 was also a two-parter. So here we go. Getting gear upgrades and using currency sometimes sucks. Gear upgrades are kind of self-explanatory. Most of us have been in a situation in life where we are playing some kind of elemental damage melee attack build, and you're level 20 and you get that dogged axe sword and it has all 3 elemental damage types on it, and you're extremely happy. And the next time you find something that is actually better than it is 15 levels later, which is essentially 2 hours of gameplay sometimes. And that just feels bad. Getting upgrades while leveling sometimes is extremely sad and slow. Do you remember those old school games where you got HP potions or buff potions or some kind of consumable that you can use and it buffs you for a short period of time, but you never really used those items because they were just so rare and you were always trying to not use them because you're not sure if this is actually the right time to finally use them. And then the game ends and you have 3 copies of each of those items, but you never used them because it was never the right time. I'm sure a lot of people can relate to this experience. And this is the exact experience that someone who is not experienced in Path of Exile will get when they see the currencies. While leveling, it is designed that you are intentionally supposed to use currencies to upgrade your items and make better items to make your leveling experience better, smoother, and faster. But the thing is, a lot of these currencies are very rare. Someone who is not proficient in Path of Exile and is a new player most likely will not want to use one of their 3 Chaos Orbs on an item to maybe not even get an upgrade on what they have. And that is a huge problem. Admittedly, this one doesn't really have a real comparison with Diablo, but at least in Diablo you are constantly getting gear pieces that are potentially upgrades or potentially collectibles that will allow you to play your character in a different way if you get bored of your current playstyle. And that's the video. I wonder what you guys think. Do you agree with this? Do you want to add something? Do you viciously disagree with something because you're a PoE fanboy and Diablo 3 is bad and Blizzard bad? Leave it down in the comments. I'm interested to hear your guys' opinion.